So, you guys, I wanted to continue to unpack something I said because this is a very, very deep topic that people need to have a lot of training in when it comes to human psychology regarding consent. And I'm going to do my best to continue to help you unpack this in your when it comes to your subconscious mind, because we are very unclear as human beings about a lot of things in this existence that we find ourselves in. And one of the things we have character disturbance about, and also just a lack of clarity on, is consent when it comes to how we interact with other people. And consent doesn't just apply, how we conduct ourselves with all living beings, not just human beings. But in this video, I'm going to be continuing to unpack consent when it comes to sex acts, sexual transactions, and human trafficking and prostitution. So now this is what I'm talking about. Like I said, it takes study, it takes understanding, it takes a person needing to have training and education around this. So I said in the last video that I was talking about how in the video that's called The Continuation of My Story, I mentioned in that video that as an adult who can consent to prostitution or sex acts, right? I will never do that. Now, let me expand upon that, because in the last video I said it depends on the situation. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that, and what I'm trying to help people understand, is when I am approached in a compromised state, whether I say, no, I will not engage in prostitution, or yes, I will engage in prostitution, that is not a lack of consent or consent, because I mentally cannot consent when I am compromised, right? So even women, the point that I was trying to make when I say it depends on the situation, even women who say, yes, I will engage in this sex act with you for money, for food, for clothing, for a place to sleep for the night, etc., etc. Even women that say yes, if they are in a mentally compromised state, that is not consent. Even if they say, yes, I'll do it. I'll do it for money. I'll do it for food. I'll do it for clothing. I was trying to make the point that even if they verbally say yes, or they go with the person, that is not consent. That person cannot consent, okay? This is really important to understand. So me personally, I have never said yes, even when I was in a compromised state, right? But women who say yes, because a lot of people look at prostitution and circumstances like this in a very oppressive manner. All right. I'm sharing this to advocate for people who are in situations like this. And you don't have to be full blown on the street, stripped of all your basic needs to be compromised. Okay. This is really important. However, I'm using this circumstance that I've lived through to illustrate my point, but you don't have to be in this extreme of a crisis to not be able to consent. Okay, this is why we need to become aware and understand how we are predatory to each other and all living beings on this planet in many different ways. Okay. Women or anyone of any gender, I want to repeat, even if they say, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I will consent to this sexual transaction. If they are in a mentally compromised state, that is not consent. Okay? This is really important to understand. Also, I'm being guided to say if a person coerces you, so they break you down mentally over time. Let's say a person says, no, I'm not comfortable. No, I'm not comfortable. And they keep telling the person, I'm not comfortable. No, I don't want to do this. But the person continues to push and pressure the person into submission. And the person eventually says, okay, eventually surrenders to that predatory act of coercion. That is not consent either. We need to get really clear on consent, and we need to understand what it means and what it looks like for a person to actually give consent. Because we have been treating each other so badly in this society, this worldwide society, where we do not honor the personal autonomy of someone else, okay? So this is what I'm being guided to share in this video. Let me see if there's anything else I'm being led to share here. I'm being guided to share a part of a story from a person that I met along my journey, whom, now I want to give a trigger warning because I'm going to mention some, I'm going to make some references to sexual violence, okay? I met a person along my journey whom, let's see, I'm trying to assess how much I should get in, how much of the story I should share right now. I was living in a hospice, okay? I was living in a hospice for the homeless. A while back, okay? And I'm gonna wait to share the aspects of my story as to why I was in a hospice for the homeless. I was in a situation where I almost died because I didn't have access to basic health care through hospitals and doctors' offices because I was homeless. There were certain procedures that I needed done that I was not being allowed to have access to certain procedures here in the US. because I was homeless and I almost died because of this. And I was so lucky that the only hospice for the homeless in the entire nation I was by, I was literally, I had the good fortune of being accepted into this hospice for the homeless, okay? Bear with me, you guys. I'm having a hard time sharing this story because it's very traumatic for me to go back here in my mind. I was accepted. I had to fight. I had to advocate. Now, a lot of my story regarding why I landed in this hospice for the homeless, like I said, I'm going to wait to share it for another time. But I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what led me to be here. What led me to be there. So I had to fight to get into this hospice for the homeless because there was a list of people who were trying to get in. And I had, it was a blessing that I was able to advocate for myself, where the management said, okay, we're going to accept you into this hospice. And while I was there, I met a person in this hospice, and she opened up to me. Bear with me, you guys, because I'm being very cautious about what I'm sharing about her story, because I want to protect people's identities and confidentiality and everything like that. But I'm being guided to share this. So there was a person that I met at this hospice who opened up to me, who told me that she, growing up, was raped. I'm sorry, I'm excuse me, I keep forgetting that is not appropriate to say that word on a public platform. She went through that by her stepdad growing up, and that when she went and told her mom what was going on, her mom was very narcissistic and denied her reality and said, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. They were all living under the same household with each other, and every time she would tell her mom, her own biological mother, what her stepdad was doing to her, the mom would say, I don't believe you. So long story short, this young woman at 21 years old had to run away from home, and she fled to the street for her survival. She didn't have anything, any money, any food, nothing, no clothing, nothing, nowhere to go. And when she was on the street, she told me she was approached by a man who pulled up in his vehicle and asked if she needed money. And she said yes, and he said, would you be willing to do these sex acts for money? And she was in a state of survival, so she said yes, because she didn't have anyone or anywhere to go. She didn't have any help. She wasn't aware of any social services or resources in her area to receive any help. And what ended up happening is when she got in the vehicle with this person, she was pulled off the radar into a sex trafficking ring. And she shared with me some of the things that happened to her for years. She was trapped in a sex trafficking ring where guns were held to her head. The sex traffickers stole her identity to put vehicles in her name to transport large amounts of cocaine. There were all these things that happened where up until her late 20s, she was trapped with these human traffickers until she got sick with cancer, right? This is what this experience did to her body. She got sick with cancer. And so when you get sick, when you're under the thumb of sex traffickers like this and you get sick, you're rendered useless to them. So they injured her, purposely injured her, and dropped her off at a hospital, from what I can remember. She ended up some way, shape, or form going to the hospital, and this is how she was diagnosed with her cancer. Now, I'm sharing this story. There's a lot more to this story, but I'm sharing this story to help people understand that there's a lot of focus on modern women and modern women prostituting themselves and OnlyFans and all these different forms of, what people consider to be prostitution. But I want to shed light on women who are born into unfathomable circumstances and having compassion on people whom, like this young lady that I met, that she was fleeing to the street. She fled to the street in a highly compromised state, all right? She was already compromised, highly compromised, because she had been being SA'd by her stepfather for years. So she was already extremely mentally ill and traumatized. And then she was approached by a human trafficker once she got to the streets, okay? And no one knows what they would actually do in that situation if they were in that situation, okay? And we need to stop judging people for what they do when we have no idea what it's like to live through what people have lived through, and we don't know what led them to we do not have all the information. We're not informed, right? Because this 21-year-old woman was not able to consent to that transaction because she was highly compromised, and a lot of people, not everyone, are being very judgmental towards people who are in situations where an observer would say this person is prostituting themselves. The reality is that we do not know. We as human beings are not aware of what people are going through and what they are trying to escape and survive a lot of the time. And when you lose access to all your basic needs, you have no idea how terrifying it is, especially at night when the sun goes down. Most people will do anything to survive and get out of that situation because it's absolutely terrifying. Okay? So we need to stop judging people, wrongfully judging people when we are not informed of everything they are facing. And we need to look at the system on a large scale and start asking ourselves, what the hell kind of a system are we supporting and living in that would cause a vulnerable adult or child to feel like they would need to say yes to engaging Hold on, let me make sure I phrase this right because I need to be really careful about my words right now. What kind of a system are we living in that manifests children and adults being human trafficked because they do not have access to basic needs to be able to survive because of the trauma they live through and the trauma that they're born into that is not their fault? What kind of system are we supporting? And we're getting behind to reinforce it when it is allowing people like this to slip through the cracks, slip through the gaps, and also be taken off the radar, and people being murdered, their lives taken, people being tortured because they don't have access to basic needs. But we say we're the best. We're the best country. We're the best in the world, right? And this is happening worldwide, but I just really want to focus on America in this video because a lot of people aren't clear about a lot of things that are going on to innocent people who don't have a chance, who never get a chance at life here in fucking America. And a lot of people are being really judgmental when they don't have access. They don't have a bird's eye view of the bigger picture. Everything is not black and white. Everything is not about the modern woman and how it's not all about women who have a choice to consent. There's other parts of the picture. Okay, there's other pieces of the puzzle and the picture that people aren't aware of. And there's a lot of injustices going on. So this is what I'm being guided to share in this video, and I will continue in the next one.